Okay, I'm told that the technology is now with us. So, welcome everybody to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee at North Norfolk District Council for December. Seems like only a second since it was January, doesn't it? But there you are. Welcome everybody and welcome visitors. Welcome to Councillor Leith for joining us for the first time. And we're not expecting any fire alarms, so if the alarm goes, we exit and go down the stairs and the toilets out there. Are there any apologies?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from councillors Penfold and Bayes. Right,
and any substitutes?
No subs, Chair.
No, I think they're late last minute, aren't they? So that was difficult then to arrange. I don't think we have any public questions and statements.
No public questions, Chair.
No. Okay, the minutes. I had a couple of minor grammatical errors. Page 2, Adam, just under first line of budget monitoring. We've got year end and but. We only need one of those, I think. And Councillor Fitzchillitt on page 7 is missing her second T. Third T, actually, to be precise. And page 7, we're missing S on small gains, 12 lines from the bottom. Is that precise enough for you, Adam? And then we've got on page 8, the last line in the second paragraph should be decarbonise rather than decarbon. Well, there might be a verb to decarbon, but I haven't heard it yet. But
no, I'll get that amended, Chair.
Maybe. Thanks very much indeed. I don't think there are any items of urgent business. Is that correct?
No, Chair.
And anybody have any declarations of interest today? No. And we don't have any petitions from members of the public, do we?
No petitions received.
And no considerations of any matter referred to the committee today? Right, so we go to the nomination of a representative for Norfolk Health Overview Select Committee. Do I have any nominations for this position? Councillor Cushing?
Well, I'd like to nominate you, Madam Chair, if I may.
Okay. That's an honour. Is everyone, have I got any other contenders? If that's the correct word, are there anybody?
Propose Mal, please. For
yes, okay. Right. Is that any more contenders? No? Okay. Should we go to the vote then?
If we may, if we are going to go to that, I mean, I think when we did this previously, we were remiss in actually asking the potential candidates for their background and qualification for the role. So I just wonder whether we actually might ask both of you to give some sort of précis of why you think you'd be qualified to do the job. Thank you. I say it's an odd request. Why is it an odd request? We are sending a representative to an external body. Surely it is not unusual to actually ask what the background and qualifications are for the person to sit on the committee.
I'd respond with, did you take an interview to sit on Overview and Scrutiny?
An internal committee, and that was actually decided internally within our group, and actually the judgment I make as group lead is I find people to sit on committees who I think have the appropriate skills to do so.
Guidelines around this?
I don't think there's any reason why you shouldn't obviously discuss it. If it's committee discretion to discuss, it's probably obviously worthwhile. If you wanted to do that, then by all means you do so, whether you want to sort of give your backgrounds. Okay, but obviously it's probably a good thing if the committee did discuss it.
Okay. 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 Mal, would you like to be brief? Really?
Actually wasn't my intention in doing so. I just thought, for any committee external body, we ought to ask what the qualifications are. So
I'll just go on the basis, if there's no precedent for it and it hasn't been asked previously, I'm a little bit surprised it's a thing, but it's fine. I'll withdraw, Victor.
Withdraw. Okay. Okay then. Well, that's a great honour. Thank you very much. If that's correct. Presumably we
Well-
don't need to go to a vote. We need to go
We'll
to-
still really need to go to the vote, Chair, obviously,
Okay.
just to make it formal. So obviously, we will do a then a recommendation to full council that obviously we're the committee's
Right.
nominating the
Okay,
person to go to that position.
all those in favour? Against? We're voting on who's going to be the representative to Norfolk Health Overview. Is withdrawn, yeah. So those in favour? Right,
I was just going to say, Chair, is just obviously, yeah, just obviously make clear, obviously, we're voting for yourself to obviously be the representative on the Norfolk
right,
representative on the Norfolk
okay, so and
Health and Overview Scrutiny Board at Norfolk County Council.
Right.
So
those against? Abstain, right, 2 abstentions. Okay, right, well, thank you very much for that. Responses to the council, the cabinet, to the committee's reports, I don't think we have any, do we?
no, Chair.
Okay, Anglian Water update. Do you guys, did you want to come up to the front and facilitate answering questions? And you'll be portfolio holders and presenting officers for a short while. You've been promoted. Do you like to introduce yourself first?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so my name's Grant Tufts. I'm the Regional Engagement Manager at Anglian Water and our Public Affairs and Engagement team. So thank you for inviting us this morning. I'll hand over to Joe.
Hi there, Joe Thompson. I'm Regional Operations Manager for Norfolk, so I'm responsible for the water recycling centres and pumping stations in Norfolk.
Hi everyone, Hannah Wilson, Planning Manager at Anglian Water. So I manage the team that respond to planning applications and work with the team that responds to your local plan.
Lovely, thank you very much indeed for coming. So you very kindly answered our questions. And we've looked at their answers, which is very helpful. And I think members have questions on what you have, the answers that you've given.
Chair.
Or
would you like me
would you
to-
rather have a presentation?
I can-
We've got half an hour, so we.
I've got I've got like a statement we can give to sort of set the scene, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Just to before we get into the sort of detailed questions. I'll just read out a statement where we are with the moment with a bit more an update from the questions as well. So yeah, it won't take long. So yes, thank you for inviting us back today for our appearance. I think it was the 3rd or 4th time we've attended this Scrutiny committee. So we always like to come along and provide updates. As I say, Chair, we provided answers to the questions pre-submitted. I'm happy to talk through these soon. So just some highlights to tell you from an Anglian Water perspective for Norfolk. So we're particularly pleased to note that all 7 of the bathing waters in Norfolk are now rated as excellent. So the topic we've talked about with you before. And the Environment Agency's recent classifications reinforce that the East of England's position as home to some of the UK's cleanest waters, which is good news, I think, for the district. As we highlighted at the last committee, our current 5-year business plan proposes an £11 billion scale investment across our region, including £1 billion to tackle storm overflows, which again is another topic we talk about a lot with you and your members. We are in discussions with our regulator Ofwat for a final determination for that plan, with a decision very soon, after which we should be able to share a bit more details around our investment plans for Norfolk, which I think was a question that we've answered previously with the committee. The £1 billion storm overflow investment is geared to sort of target the priority storm overflows first, so those that spill the most and have the most environmental impact, and we are looking at ways to reduce the frequency of those spills through things like storage and preventing surface water from entering our system, increased monitoring, and increase the capacity at some of our sites as well. We aim to reduce discharges by 17% in the next 5 years, which is in line with the government's standard storm overflow reduction plans. So that's available on the government website. So in Norfolk, we've got plan schemes, and again, subject to prioritisation and timing based on our discussions with our our regulator. But they include things like spill reduction schemes at Bristol, Fakenham, Horning, storm tanks at Aldborough, which I think started this month. We've got overflow reduction schemes at Fakenham as well. A spill reduction scheme at Munsley, which again is good for the bathing waters. And in addition, we're looking at sites to reduce storm overflow spills elsewhere in the district. But again, details will follow as the plans unfold. As the committee knows, those storm overflows are fitted with what's called event duration monitors, and the full details of that data will be available next April once it's been validated for the previous year. But we can report that up until the end of October, discharges in North Norfolk were 194 occasions, average of 6.4 spills per storm overflow, an average of 21 hours, which is significantly lower than last few years. I think that linked to dry weather in the last year, but I think it does show that the improvements are starting to take effect, which is good news. Other planned investments during the next 5 years include things like reducing phosphorus and nitrogen and ammonia, again, environmental impact chemicals that go through water, which again, we're investing quite a lot of money to reduce the impact of those through our works and in line with environment agency permits sort of changes. And we're also increasingly monitoring our sewer network with what's called dynamic sewer visualization, which monitors in our sewers, which tell us before things go wrong, if they're going to go wrong. So it's prevention. And we've got about 939 of those monitors in North Norfolk and more to come to give us more insight about how our network is operating. As we mentioned in previous meetings, we've cleared a total of 35,000 blockages across our network in the last year across our region. 80% of those are avoidable, and I know we've done lots of discussion with yourself and colleagues around our Just Bin It campaign about trying to reduce wet wipes and unnecessary things that are flushed into toilets and down sinks. Around 9,500 packets of wet wipes are put into our sewers every day across our region, and it costs us a lot of money to fix those problems. And obviously, they can cause pollution and blockages, and they present quite a challenge for us as a water company. Just recently, the government have announced a ban on plastic in wet wipes, which is great news. That's going through the statute books now, but that's not far enough. We need to be encouraging people to bin the wipe. We're not saying that wet wipes shouldn't be used. They've got a place in society, absolutely. And taking plastic out is fine, but even though they might say unflushable on the packet, they're not really unflushable because they can still block up our sewers and people's systems. So we are encouraging the message around binning them rather than flushing them and not using the loo as a bin. So that is something we're pushing quite vehemently again through all of our contacts with councils and our members of parliament. So we have got a toolkit, which I think we've already shared with the council. We can share again, which helps you spread that message to your communities as well. We've got active teams that go out and do presentations and drop-in events as well. So again, we'd be interested if the council were keen to follow that up afterwards, and we can set that up as well. Finally, we're also updating you today on our investments on clean water. And there's going to be around 10 kilometres of brand new water mains being fitted in the district in the next 5 years, about £2.4 million investment. We've got a map we can share where those locations are going to be, but I know that's a topic that's come up before in the committee about the resilience of water supply across the district. But again, it shows our commitment to try and replace some of those mains as a part of our £11 billion investment scheme. Across the region, we'll be targeting problem water mains and getting those replaced as well. So that's just a quick summary of some of the points I think we'd like to make this morning, and obviously get onto the questions that we pre-submitted and any clarity or further discussion on those we'd happily talk through. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Does anyone have any questions about the Councillor Fletcher?
I could ask to last time. I wonder what measures for conservation of rivers, especially in the face of the accelerated political plans. This was given over, which was for plans and something. Basically, the build very, very, very minimal houses and lots of previously Jack and Kate given it gave sense that the companies might have more influence actually on they have had in the past. But this is historically named. That's true.
Yeah, no, a very good question. So you're absolutely right. Our business plan didn't take into account the government's aspirations for growth and that accelerated delivery of growth. So what we are doing now, as you may have noted, we've changed how we are responding to planning applications in terms of we are now objecting when our water recycling centres are at capacity or in some cases over capacity, and that is due to the watercourse and the protection of the environment at that receiving watercourse. Where we have a scheme within our business plan, so AMP8 2025 to 2030 at water recycling centres, we are recommending a pre-occupation condition. Pre-occupation. So basically what we're asking local authorities to do is apply a condition in those circumstances, and that will ensure the developer doesn't connect to the network and increase the flows at the water recycling centre until we've delivered that growth scheme. Again, it's all about the protection of the environment and the watercourse. Our permits at our WRCs, at our water recycling centres, are unique to each centre, and they are set by the Environment Agency, and the limits are set to protect the environment. So that's how we're using planning in terms of environmental protection for the watercourse. We're also using the planning system now to highlight any constraints within the network. So we look at the network differently to the water recycling centre. And specifically for the network, we're looking at overflows, pollutions and potential for increase of spills, flood risks, etc. And we will be highlighting those either through objections again or giving the developer a specific point in the network to connect to, which avoids all of the existing constraints. So yeah, we are utilising the planning system a lot more than we ever have. We are also lobbying and working with government, DEFRA and Ofwat to understand how we can meet the increased growth demand. And that is a conversation that's happening now, but it won't be quick answers, but we are working collaboratively across our regulators and government to ensure that we protect our customers and the environment whilst enabling growth.
Thank you. Councillor Hankins.
It's good to hear that you've recognised the fact that there has been a significant increase in planning. Have you seen the plan?
Your local plan?
Yeah.
Yes. So our team has responded to the local plan, and we have asked for provisions in the policies to ensure that developers engage with us at early stages, and that there is a hook, if you like, within the policies for us when the planning application comes in to actually confirm that there is capacity to ensure the environment is protected.
So having seen the plan, are there any particular challenges within what we're planning to Anglian Water? I think I raised the question of North Walsham, where the increase in housing is planned for something in the order of 2,480. Does that provide a challenge for Anglian Water in meeting that requirement?
Yes, it does. So where we have capacity, and apologise, I'm not 100% sure on that. Thank you.
I can probably shed some light. So North Walsham is probably less impacted, not from a network capacity, but from an environmental capacity, on the grounds that North Walsham doesn't discharge directly into a watercourse. It discharges to the North Sea via the Long Sea outfall at Munsley. So in terms of direct environmental impacts and river protection, it doesn't have the same phosphorus nutrient standards as some of our other work. So from a water recycling centre perspective, if we're using a point of sustainable connection, there is probably less pressure at North Walsham specifically on the water recycling centre.
My question was directed more to water supply than conservation, quite frankly. I mean, as I understand it, there are two water towers that supply North Walsham. Are they going to cope with this kind of increase?
I may have to defer on that one on the grounds that, yes, I'm biased to water recycling. Do you know, Hannah?
Sorry, I don't know specifics, so if Grant's able to have, otherwise we can take it away. But just in general, how we are looking at ensuring the protection of our domestic water supply. So for when I say domestic, it's homes, and in terms of business use, it's their toilets and kind of kitchens and showers. Because we have the duty to supply, so we're looking at the long-term resource for our water resource management plan, how to reduce leakages, etc. But also, as a side to that, we're looking at how we can ensure the protection for domestic water supply by restricting, unfortunately, in certain cases, non-household and industrial water demand. So we're looking at working with our industrial kind of customers, how they can reduce the demand and reuse water. We've also got environmental incentives for developers who are delivering housing schemes. So we're actually paying them to deliver a scheme which reduces water consumption and uses grey water use. So there's a lot happening to ensure that that protection is there for our customers. I don't know, Grant, if you know any specifics about.
Not about that, but we'll find out. But as Hannah said, we are obliged to provide water for those domestic connections, so we'll have to find a way of doing it. But yeah, using less water, I've said it many times when I've been to many committees, we do come out and talk to people about using less of the product we sell you, but that's important that we get that message across and save water because it is so precious. But yeah, we will have to provide water for those houses, but how and where you do it will be up for debate. Maybe at the expense, as Hannah said, of industrial non-domestic supplies, which we don't want to do either. We want to support all growth sustainably in the region, but we have to provide water for domestic. Yeah.
So finally, can I take it that you're confident that you can meet that challenge, given the various objectives that you have?
So we have to meet that challenge, and the constraints we're looking at through our water resources long-term management plan, we recognise as a challenge. We've also done a lot of research, and we've produced a document with the Environment Agency, Natural England, etc., and a number of our local authorities and other water companies to prove to developers that there's a different way of approaching this, that actually it's their responsibility as well as everybody's and our customers. And through the local plan, we've provided that evidence and asked that local authorities produce policies that ensure water reduction and water efficiencies considered appropriately.
Thank you.
And just to add, in the longer term, obviously we've got several strategic options coming along the line. So 2 new reservoirs in our region, a pipeline bringing water from wetter parts of the region to the drier parts. We're looking at desalination. One location is in Norfolk and one in Lincolnshire, yet to be decided. Advanced water recycling, so effluent reuse. So these are big, strategic projects to deliver more water to counter the fact that there's increased demand, but also we're able to take less water from the environment because of continuing restrictions from environment to obviously protect those chalk streams, everything else. So they are coming, but in the meantime, we have to find other ways to try and keep those taps flowing for the growth that's already in your local plans.
Councillor Cushing was next. Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm afraid mine's a variation on a theme. I represent the North Fakenham ward, which is planned to build over 1,600 homes in the coming probably 15 years. Unlike the North Walsh one, our one is supposedly further forward in terms of its development, and it is anticipated that reserve planning will come forward next year, and with development starting in 2027. So really, you may not have the details from what you said in relation to your previous answers, but I would appreciate a written answer to make sure that actually Anglian Water do have the capacity to supply all those new homes. In terms of Fakenham, that's probably about a 20% increase in terms of the size of the town, and a key part of North Norfolk's local plan. We only have one water tower, unlike the 2 that North Walsham is blessed with. We appreciate some early reassurance on that, and that consideration has been given to it. Don't you have any comments now, though?
Councillor Leaf.
Yes, I represent residents in North Walsham East, and I know from residents that currently, as things stand, the water pressure is so low that some of them can't run a shower and a dishwasher at the same time. So that doesn't bode well for the future.
So, so water pressure is a statutory requirement for water companies to keep. So we have to maintain a certain pressure. So I'm presuming people do contact us, but I would recommend that people ring and contact Anglian Water if they do suffer from low pressure, because that, yeah, we're obliged by law to provide a certain bar to make sure you can run your showers and baths. So it could be a local issue or a burst main somewhere else that can cause pressure fluctuations. But yeah, please encourage your residents to contact us with any sort of pressure problems, and we'll investigate and see whether there's a problem we can fix.
Councillor Shires?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I represent North Walsham West, but I'm also the county member for North Walsham East. And what I've noticed in recent weeks when I've undertaken public realm walks is a lot of the infrastructure for Anglian Water is failing in the way that it's sinking our pavements and roads across the town. And this is making it very difficult for those who have a mobility aid to access the local town centre, for example. It's causing disruption because we're having pavements dug up all the time. But more so, it's creating some hazards for our cyclists and motorcyclists in the town. They have got less grip on the road than vehicles. But we are plagued, unfortunately, by constant works to fix these problems. When we've got expansion coming, there is no faith in Anglian Water from the town that we're not going to suffer the same problems. I understand there are going to be budgetary constraints, but when you can walk over a full estate that's been there 30 years and you can see that all the water meters are falling into the pavements, there has to be investment to make sure that people aren't disadvantaged by poor infrastructure and can still access shops and banks and post offices.
Yeah, I'm assuming from what you're saying, you're talking about water supply and water supply meters. Have those been called in to the relevant Anglian Water teams, do we know?
I've got a whole estate. I did a walk about 2 weeks ago. We can see where patchwork has happened, where residents have called them in, but we have a complete estate.
I think if you could forward that on to us and we'll take that as a takeaway from this
Marvellous,
meeting and
thank you.
follow it up with the local network and reinstatement teams, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
So you've spoken about the new local plan, but what about developments in the current local plan that might be exceeding the capacity of either the water treatment works or the water delivery? What's happening with them?
So when we get a planning application, even if it's within a local plan, we will object and raise concerns where capacity is and the environment is at risk. So despite it being in a local plan, that doesn't mean we have been enabled to get investment through our business planning and Ofwat. So in order to get that investment, Ofwat likes certainty. So as you know, within a local plan, they look 15 years into the future and beyond. And obviously there's a trajectory, but things change. Our business planning works on 5-year cycles, so they are not aligned, which is something we have lobbied and are still lobbying to change. And our drainage and wastewater management plan is focusing on promoting a plan that actually is aligned with local authorities' local plans. So in terms of planning applications, if one was to land today and it was an allocation, we would still raise constraint concerns.
Okay, and are you still only commenting on developments of 10 dwellings or more?
No, no longer are we doing that. So what we look at planning applications now is total risk. So one dwelling, for example, in a very rural area could have a massive impact, whereas sometimes we have more control when it's 3,000 homes because we have some time, we have those longer conversations and master planning kind of engagements. So no, we are looking at risk rather than size of development.
Okay. And if you're replacing the water mains, what about the actual sewage network? Because I have concerns about the sewage network having capacity. And I don't know, is that being taken into account? Because I never hear it spoken about, but I have pumping, Victorian pumping stations and presumably Victorian pipework carrying stuff across marshes and things like that. And I wonder if that network is substantial enough. I have a lot of concern about that in my area.
Absolutely, no, we do, and the thousands of monitors I mentioned earlier are doing exactly that. They're monitoring the performance of our sewer network to tell us how it's operating and whether it's at risk of failure or have any issues. So absolutely, we have a program of maintenance and repair on our sewer network as much as we do on our clean water network. So yes, the answer is we do monitor that, and we will replace and fix. Again, on a priority basis, we've got about 78,000 kilometres of sewers in Anglian Water. So obviously it takes a while, and you're right, some of them are quite old, but some of them that are quite old are actually quite good, and they last a long time. They were built differently back in those days, but yes, it is definitely in our gift and our plans to monitor and replace and maintain those that are going to fail. So if we can, yeah.
And I didn't see any planned investment to improve the spill frequency at Langham, Walsingham and Holt. You spoke at length about the other investments, but these are areas where you're still getting spills. And I know it's very dilute sewage, but we are going into chalk. This is all going into chalk streams.
So there were investigations into Langham, Walsingham and Holt. So the investigations are modelling investigations. So we have to deliver essentially a modelled output. That's part of the AMP8 enhancement programme. And those modelling investigations are likely to form the investment in the next planning cycle or the next WINEP cycle into the AMP9 cycle. So yes, there are a number of overflows that are being improved in this area in this 5-year cycle, which are deemed by the Environment Agency to be the most environmentally impactful ones. And then the sort of second tranche is the ones that are deemed to have a lesser environmental impact. That's how the prioritisation is done to get the greatest environmental impact first. So yes, there's investigations on 3 of them to be complete by April 27. When we say investigation, that tends to be modelling. That tends to be monitors placed in the catchment to understand how it responds to rainfall and sources of whether it's infiltration, sources of excess water, and that timing aligns with the business planning cycle. So those model outputs can be put into the next business planning cycle to look at what investments will be required in the next AMP period to reduce them generally to a spill frequency of 10 or below.
And when will that be? The next investment cycle?
As it stands, it will be 2030 to 2035, subject to any wider regulatory change in the industry.
Okay, lovely. You use dry water flow as your estimate for headroom. Is that, given that we have quite a lot of sudden rains now, is that the most sensible thing to do?
It's the rules that we follow for calculating capacity is dry weather flow. Probably not best to comment on whether it's the best methodology for it. It's the methodology that the industry follows upon guidance from the Environment Agency.
Right.
So yes, it gives you a reasonable idea, but there are different ways to calculate them.
Okay. And when I checked to see what sewage flows there were after the heavy rain we had the other day, a couple of the monitors weren't working. That was, I think, Walsingham. I looked at Walsingham and Holt probably.
So it's
Langham.
possible. Our uptime for our monitors are, off the top of my head, we are achieving 97.8% at the moment, I believe, uptime. So we have a performance metric around uptime for monitors, because obviously the narrative around monitors being offline is not good because it creates questions. So it's one of the things that we are measured on. It was around 96, but I think we're up to 97.8. So yes, they are at times in maintenance or in fault, and we fix, multiple monitors on a daily basis. Those particular ones, if they're in maintenance, I can look into it as to the reasons why. Sometimes it can be a glitch in terms of how they are showing on our map. But yes, that data is all still reported. If monitors are offline in a maintenance state for extended periods of time, we are actually penalised quite heavily for that by assuming an average number of spills for that overflow that is probably significantly higher than it's spilling. So if you turn a monitor off for a year, as an example, you would pick up in your sort of performance assessment an assumed spill frequency that is actually very, very high. So there's no incentive for monitors being off for Anglian Water. It actually drives our spill count and our spill frequency up. So part of that transparency is we want them online as much as possible, and we're quite penalised if they're not.
Absolutely.
Can I just check, are all CSOs monitored in North Norfolk? They are now, are they?
All CSOs are monitored.
Right, thank you.
And just going back to the planning, are you statutory consultees now then?
For local plans, we are, but planning applications, we are not. So we have lobbied government for many years to become statutory consultee. In the Cunliffe review, so the review of the water industry as a whole, they came out to say that we should have more say within planning. It didn't go so far as to say we should be statutory consultees. It hinted towards it. Recently, government has a consultation running now regarding statutory consultees and actually reducing the number of statutory consultees to speed up the planning process. But actually, one thing that consultation document has picked out is the possibility of looking at water companies becoming statutory consultees at some point in the future. It made no promise, but it hinted towards considering it. So we have responded to that consultation to say that we believe through the planning application process, we should be part of that. It makes sense to go through the entire planning process from local plans to planning applications to be a statutory consultee rather than just one element of it.
Right. We did right to ask if you could be, but we were not rewarded. Right. Has anybody else got any questions? It's Councillor Raz.
I think the last time we had a meeting, oversight and scrutiny, it was I think it was quite a dry summer, and there was still a few spillages. Would you be able to sort of paint a picture of how many spillages there's been sort of within the last 3 or 4 months?
Yeah, I think we sort of picked up before you joined actually, so I can repeat that. But yeah, so we I've got some notes here. Hang on. So yeah, so in the first up until the end of October this year, we've had 194 spills in North Norfolk, which is an average of 6.47 per overflow for an average of 21 hours, which is significantly lower than previous years. As I did say earlier, that is linked obviously to drier weather, but also it does show, I think, some of our interventions are starting to help with increased storage. We're looking at reducing infiltration in the network for water that shouldn't be in our systems, and other sort of mechanisms to sort of reduce those spills. So yes, we are looking at an improved state, but obviously we're still watching brief, and the weather does have a big factor to play. But all of our storm overflows are on a storm overflow reduction plan, which is published on the government website, so you can see everyone what the plan is to reduce the spill numbers. And what our actions will be in the next sort of 5, 10, 15 years to meet those targets.
And just to mention, there was one key one, which is the new storage tank at Runton Beach Road that is now online, that has significantly impacted the spill frequency of that. It sits right next to the Norfolk Coastal Path. So someone may have seen you, but that's now operating, and that's significantly reduced the spills from that overflow as intended.
And with North Walsham flowing into the sea, as it were, is it the distance that makes it the effluent less toxic? Because it seems to me that it's still got got some nutrients in it and it's still flowing into the sea.
So the Environment Agency issue us with a permit based on essentially the water body that is the receiving watercourse. So a small chalk stream, typically inland, will have much tighter parameters attached to it than something that is discharging, let's say, 1 kilometre into the North Sea. So yes, and the Environment Agency are the party that permit us on that. So the reason for mentioning North Horsham earlier is as it goes, discharges through a long sea outfall. It won't have the same, especially constraints around nutrients that we see across Broadland in Norfolk, which has very, very tight standards, technically achievable levels for nutrients, being just less impactful into the North Sea.
Okay, thank you. And has anyone else got any questions? It's a pity that our colleagues aren't here because I know that there are other people who have concerns about their patch. Yeah.
But,
Okay.
Chair, I mean, obviously, if they want to submit anything afterwards, happy to take those questions in writing as well, Chair.
Yes, we could- Yeah, we could suggest that to the absent members. Okay, so if everyone's content that they've learnt all they need to from Anglia Water. Well, thank you very much. It was very helpful having the answers. And just one final question. So do we actually have to prompt you that a planning application has come in? Because if it must be quite a job otherwise to see what's
Yeah,
is
so
happening.
your case officers are very good. They do send us consultations as standard for planning applications. And we also use a third party called Glenigan who monitor planning applications. So we get 2 notifications. There are always some that we miss, but as a whole, we do capture most of them, and your case officers are very good at engaging with us.
Super. Thank you very much.
Do you want to add, Hannah, we are speaking to the planning team soon, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, next week, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. So we're also having myself, Grant and Tess, our local plans officer, will be having conversations as well with them.
Super. Good. That's lovely. Thank you very much. It's been been very helpful. Thank you for your answers. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so item 12 is reporting progress implementing the corporate action plan 2023 to 2027. Lovely, thank you very much. Yes, Councillor Charles, would you like to introduce this item?
Michelle, apologies to the committee, whilst the papers, not all of the papers stay in mine, you will hear me for the entire meeting, of which I'm sure you're completely delighted. So the paper today is the in-year action plan progress. Councillor Adams, who would normally report on this, has been very kind enough to send me some things that he would like me to draw out to the committee's attention. So if you're happy to work through them one by one, I'll refer to each item by number so that you can follow where I'm going with it, if that's helpful for everybody. So we'll begin at number 1. So the adoption of the local plan, of which we are at a completed stage, will be coming to full council, where it will be discussed and recommended, as it was by the most recent cabinet meeting. Everybody will remember how contentious some of the items have been in the local plan, and obviously it's been spoken about today in terms of Anglian Water, and hopefully this plan will see us into whatever authority will come beyond where we are right now. Point 2 is the climate impact reports. So that went through the last committee cycle, which is fantastic. 3 about waste collection, obviously. Sorry, Steve, you are here. If we need to discuss any more about recycling and food waste, obviously I've spoken to the committee and cabinet previously about food waste incoming, and obviously Councillor Callum Ringer did answer my points that I raised at full council last month. 5, there's been a drop-in event being prepared for councillors to attend ahead of the up and coming full council meeting with regards to Coastwise. I think you've all got something in your pigeonhole about that. 9, the discussion on Norfolk health and social care facilities took place and envisaged, and representatives from these different statutory bodies are reconvening following the new year to discuss possibilities around increasing services. Health services across the district were discussed at this meeting. Item 10, the leisure centre and swimming pool in Fakenham. Work is now underway on this project, which is fantastic. We've seen lots of photos and imagery on social media. It's always good to see a project beginning and when it's taken so long on paper. So I think that's been very, very gratefully received, and obviously secured and led by the district council officers. Item 11, the 3G pitch in Fakenham preparatory work is also underway for this, following the significant successful Chroma facility, which has continued to receive praise. Number 12, we're also advancing towards provision of the outdoor classroom facility in Holt Country Park and a modest investment in the toilet facilities there. And we have spoken about that previously over in Scrutiny Committee. 13, the homelessness and housing needs data has been distributed again. Pretty sure that all members had a copy of that when it was sent to their parishes. It had lots of information in it, and hopefully it should help facilitate some of those conversations with local people who are on the fence potentially about development. And it's also very helpful to argue the case for our families that are in need of housing. 14, we're seeking to finalise a further arrangement in respect of the second homes premium, which we hope mirrors the current financial year. The following paper does include second homes, but I'll cover that in the following item. Point 7, we come to the 17, sorry, we continue to make full use of the premiums and overall below half the national average here compared to other local authorities. So there are lots of issues around probate, unfortunately, which we've seen over many, many years, slightly exacerbated by the pandemic. I'll take the opportunity to, on item 18, just promote the Invest in North Norfolk, the no newsletters, and make sure that everybody here in this chamber has subscribed. The team's worked very hard to make sure that we have adequate information and knowledge passed out about what's going on in the district economically. 19, appreciable further progress in supporting further external meetings with various partners in respect of the future of Bacton gas terminals, and this is a regular activity. 21, banking hub facilities open in Holt, imminent in Cromer, and at the time of writing, the leader had said there was in progress in North Walsham. As far as we're aware, there's just a signature to be put on a contract. It's coming, there's a location. And at that point, Councillor Gray and I are part of a charity which will be decanting premises to enable the bank hub to come into the high street in North Walsham. And that's very exciting in the town. There's we do have a lot of allocations for the size of our district, and currently, sadly, Fakenham and Sheringham are unable to be nominated given the presence of Nationwide as it stands. And item 23, it's regrettable that we have seen a hard stop to the UK SPF and the, I would call it REP funding, but I don't think that's the correct pronunciation of the acronym, which was supposed to replace the EU grant funding, but now we have got uncertainty of how that gap's going to be closed. We're hopeful that the government will look favourably on local businesses with all the decisions that they're making and potentially continue the fund, but we don't know. And it's going to be harder knowing now that we've got delays in devolution with the mayoral election being pushed back to 2028. If we have any questions, I will take them as best I can. I'm happy that Officer Hems is sat beside me if there's anything that I can't deal with.
Okay, Councillor Hankins.
I've got a general point, and that is that the classification, amber, green, whatever, there was a discussion at the pre-meeting yesterday, and there seemed to be a consensus that that was a bit broad. And so I made a suggestion, and I think that that has some support, and that it would be more useful if, for instance, in terms of in progress, green, what percentage in progress? In other words, to give an indication of where this particular action was on the scale of things. That would still be subjective, but it gives a lot more information than green in progress.
So we have worked backwards and forwards as I've been elected on how we show progress. So this is a 12-month plan, and similar to the way that we do with budget monitoring, for example, the green means that we're on track for the end of the year. So at this point, we're going to reach the destination by the end of the action plan, which is 12 months. So to quantify that would suggest that where we are in the monthly cycle, we're on track. And I think potentially some of these you can do. So we're now in November, we did this in May. So we're like halfway through. So we're 50% complete, 50% still to go, but we believe we're going to be able to meet the target. So it's how close we are to making sure that we're going to deliver it by the end of the lifetime of this plan. I think we've had some difficulties with the way that this has been given. Sometimes there's been too much information. We've had benchmarking on some areas against other authorities. We've had the dial situation, which was most uncomfortable for this committee. So this is the most honest and frank and transparent way that we collectively have felt that we're able to give the information over a 12-month period. And obviously we can have the conversation about it. There have been various iterations of what the performance management looks like of this administration for this committee. This is the most detailed, I believe. We had lots of to and fro over the previous one. Victoria will remember because you were quite keen on there being more information about the specific actions. So we've given more information about the specific actions, whereas previously we were just on target and then pie charts and other things. This gives us actual deliverable actions that we can report on. So if it's a case that the key on item 3 might need a little bit more information in there, so it's clearer what the colours are for, then I think that would be beneficial. But I'm open to the committee on that, because obviously this is a 12-month plan.
Did you want to continue?
Yes, indeed. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, if I can just come in on that. I think one of the challenges that suggestion presents is that some of these are non-linear. So they're not, you're not delivering everything on a month-by-month basis. Councillor Shout referred to budgets. Some of our budgets are assumed to spend so much per month. If you had a £120 budget, you might spend £10 a month, very simply. Some of our budgets are profiled, so you might spend nothing for the first 11 months and all of the £120 in the last month. So from your point of view as a committee, if you look at something and say, well, we're halfway through the year and you've only delivered 10%, it's probably still on track, because we only intended to spend to deliver 10% of the activity in that first period of time, and all of the activity is programmed in the last period of it. So I think I understand the suggestion. I think the challenge would be that it probably would raise questions for you in terms of, well, why have you only delivered 10%? Well, that's because all we intended to. So the officers are basically reporting back to you and saying, is this on track as it stands at the moment? And they are saying either, yes, it's green, we are comfortable, we are delivering against the timetable, against the targets, and we will be able to do so, or there are some problems, and there might be an issue of timetabling or whatever it might be. And so effectively putting in a percentage of how much is complete, I don't think would actually resolve your picture of the situation in the way you're hoping to.
Well, Mr. Chair, that's a point of view, quite frankly. The point is that for each of these elements, there must be a plan which says this is the objective, these are the milestones in order to meet that objective. So basically, what I'm suggesting is that against those milestones, that there could be a subjective assessment. Look, we're halfway there, or we're a quarter of the way there. So I think that would be more helpful. So I would recommend that consideration is given to a little bit more subjective assessment of these particular categories.
I think the difficulty is we've been criticised for being subjective and not measurable. So I understand where you're coming. So let's just have a conversation then against, let's go for the local plan, for example, right? So the local plan is not done or completed until it's rubber stamped by full council. Now, as a full council, that is your end game. So it's not done. Most of the work is done. How do we then quantify where I believe we are, where Councillor Leaf believes we are, where Councillor Cushing believes we are in completing the local plan? It will be complete by the end of the action year, and the Greens suggest we are on target for that. But how do we put a percentage or a fraction on that? And I think that's where we're going to disagree, because to give it a subjective is the main reason that this committee has felt that the way that we do performance management of our plans hasn't worked, because everything is so subjective. So unless we're going to come across a broad agreement of how we're going to measure something, I don't believe that that's ever going to satisfy the committee. Unfortunately, we could have a look at all of the items, and we're all going to have a different perspective on where we believe we are as a percentage, and that's why we can't be subjective about it. We can say that by the end of the year we're on track. Everything in green, we're on track. Everything in amber, we've had to slightly deviate from the plan to be on track, and that's what we can say, because it'll be completed in 12 months. There's nothing in here, I've just flicked through, that's red. So we are in a strong position in that perspective. So if you look at the key, it's the red ones that I would wish us to focus on, and then the amber ones to figure out what the barriers are. And I think that's why we've altered. I probably think this is about the third or fourth iteration of how we look at our plans.
I think, yeah, what do other people feel? I mean, I miss the benchmarking. I used to like the benchmarking, and I still feel there's some value in there, but it is very time consuming and it isn't comprehensive. But everybody, I mean, do people want to delve into this deeper? If we do, we'd have to do it offline, I think, because otherwise we'll spend all morning talking about, the actual percentage of the progress. I mean, I know there are, it would be nice. I personally would like to see why it's amber. I mean, it's not always explained why it's amber. You could explain why it's green. I mean, sometimes it's easier to see that it's amber, and sometimes easy to see why it's green, but whether that could be added. But I don't know. I do totally get your point, Mike. We have been cantered round the paddock a few times on this.
Well,
but perhaps you could have you guys could have an offline discussion about how we could improve it.
Well, to conclude, I understand the points that are being made. However, from my point of view, I don't believe these categories are specific enough. It's as simple as that.
Right.
So I'm asking for consideration to be made for a little bit more sort of focus on this, and a little bit more specific focus. So that's all I'm asking,
Can we park that for a second? Because it might be that other people have other desires.
Yeah.
Councillor Cushing might be itching to do something different, and Councillor Gray might be wanting something completely different. So we should have a consensus on this.
I'd like to make some broad points. Actually, I'd like to follow up I think the good points that Councillor Hankin has made, and these are points that Councillor Shires will know that I've made many times in the past. Is that if you look at your corporate plan, you've got 30 actions in there. I would say about 2/3 of those are process orientated. They are not action delivery orientated. If you look at it, it's full of words like monitor, ensure, consider, I don't think the word deliver actually appears once in those 30 actions. Now that, from my, you may pull your face, it's not find the word deliver in there. Most of the actions are, even the ones which easily could be identified where you could put some specific smart metrics in there, you don't. And I'll give you a for example. Go to item number 10 in there, the flash swimming pool. Now I know from sitting on the steering group for that the plan is to build that facility swimming pool by Christmas of next year, and to actually open it to the public either by the end of the year or early next year. So you've actually got a really good one there that could be easily measurable. So actually the action is, or the outcome is, we will deliver that swimming pool, be built by the end of next year. It will be open to the public by the following year, and it will be done to costs. All those things you can measure. When you're reporting back to us, you can actually measure progress against that. Yes, we are on schedule, so therefore it is green. We are on budget, therefore it is green. That's an easy one that you could do, but it's not. We just got some fluffy woolly objective there, which give you all sorts of caveats in case the timescales shift, I suspect. But it goes right the way through. And the point I'm making, if you look at actual, and I've been doing this as long as Officer Hems has, so I'm looking at these things in my private life, in my working life. When you look at a plan which is just full of greens, it looks like it's an easy plan, because a plan I would expect to see would have ambers, it'd have reds in there, because they're demanding objectives, and you're not going to achieve them all. Now, I feel the fear from you is that somebody like me will come along and bash you if you're not achieving things. Actually, we wouldn't. It's not a bad thing to have reds and ambers on plans, which you actually, the helpful way, you may be laughing, actually, is actually at a committee like this, in the world where I came from, if something's red or amber, the actual response to that is, why is it? What can be done to help get it back on track? That's actually where a committee like this could actually add value, I would suggest, in terms of doing that. I mean, you may go, but nobody outside this forum is particularly interested in this plan, Councillor Shars. The SLT might be, this committee might be. How many others are? It's actually about how we can get deliver. And end of the day, we all want this council to succeed and deliver and put things in there. Now, we might argue at times, you might have slightly different priorities. A lot of them actually will coincide regardless of who is running this council.
I think that people do care about the plan. They might not care about the document, but they care about what is delivered off the back of it. And I think that's where we are. You may not see many of the word deliver, and I am a huge champion that the general public don't really understand what delivery is. We don't do pizzas, we don't do parcels. So unfortunately, Mr. Hems will know that I don't like the word delivery. We need more specifics in there, because delivery is such a broad phrase. The difficulty that we're going to have here is, if you want an in-depth report on every single thing, which, perfect, if that's where the committee is, these things are reported on regularly to the committee in different formats, in different reports. I touched on the report that Councillor Varley brought at the last committee. So you've already seen the documentation for that. Many of these items are reported in cabinet reports that come to full council. So is it a difficulty of pulling those together so that the committee is able to follow the information that's put through the council? Because if that's where we are, then we'll need to try and figure out, how do we direct the committee to all the information that does come through this committee and does go to full council? Because I'd rather that we had all the information together. The other problem that you're going to have is that's going to be a lot of reading. So we're often criticised for giving everybody too much information. So how do I know from all of these items what is enough information? And I think that's where we're going to have the to and fro that we've always had. There's too much information, there's not enough, it's too technical, it's not technical enough, there's too much data, there isn't. We need to find an equal footing for that. There is never going to be a plan, Councillor Cushing, that I bring to you that is going to satisfy every aspect of what you wish to see. And I know that, and we've been through this many times before. I think the medium-term financial strategy is the one document that has come to committee that everybody was happy with. And we can't do everything in the same format. So I don't know what the committee wants beyond what we're providing unless you're very specific. We've had this many times before. So potentially the committee should go away and figure out what it is, because no matter what iteration we have given you in this, you as a committee, you've never been satisfied. And this is probably the 4th or 5th iteration of residents want to see from what we do as a council, rather than we have the constant to and fro if we don't like the way the report's done, because this is taking up more time than we need.
Councillor Leith?
Just wondering if it might be useful to have an additional column, just summarising what remains to be done and giving a time frame for each stage. So, you know, we've yet to do this, and each bit would be, you know, what you're aiming for in terms of timing, just to help provide a bit more information for people.
So potentially next steps.
Yeah, kind of thing. Yeah.
That's a great.
I'd suggest the committee itself actually convene to decide what the standard looks like that they want, because otherwise this is lots of picking and pocking backwards and forwards, and it's actually a waste of time. We need to agree a template that we feel would be a standard and acceptable for what we need, or at least all of the committee members would like to see, before we're asking for any changes at all. Otherwise, this is going to be a very long, drawn-out process, which, by the sound of it, it has been several times.
Well, I think there are tweaks that could be made. That's a good suggestion, Councillor Gray. Can we look at content? Is there any content that's up that anyone has any queries? For example, I mean, I must say, I do like the odd metric as well. That makes it much easier to understand. Affordable housing, on the column right on the left, it says 76 in with number 15. And on the right, it says 93 for 25-26, which is the correct number.
Can I come back to you on that one? I think it's 96, but I haven't got anything in front of me to confirm that.
Okay, lovely. And why is 11, and the two that are amber where it doesn't explain why. One is one of the coast ones. One of the sports pitches. It sounds pretty good actually, if it's amber. And then there's the coastal protection scheme is number 4, which is finished and you're getting money.
So
That's 4 and 11.
So if I just pick up it, I'm sorry, I'm taking them in the order you gave them to me. So I'm
Yeah.
going to do 11 first.
Yeah.
So 11, you'll notice that it's about 3G pitches in general, of which it talks about 3. So Cromer has been delivered. Fakenham is part of the Fakenham Leisure and Sports Hub provision, and North Walsham has not progressed beyond a stage of trying to secure a lease with the local football club, or renew the lease that enables us to reach that football threshold for Football Foundation funding.
Okay.
And so from that point of view, the big chunk of it is going very well. There is one element which we continue to work on, and we are meeting with the North Walsham Town Football Club in order to try and progress that. So I think in terms of the comments previously about some of that specifics, there is also a thing where some of these are quite broad aims, and so they are quite difficult to quantify in terms of that rating, because you're right, they are not, some of them are not specific. So if you were looking at progress, you would say that potentially 2/3 of this is being progressed, 1/3 hasn't in terms of that. But actually, we might never ever get to the point. Well, I'm not saying never, but I won't say never.
Hope not.
But it might take a long time to progress the third one of those.
Yeah.
And so there were all sorts of elements to that. But yes, certainly in terms of that specific, the reason it's amber is because there is one site where we're having difficulty in actually getting to the point of making the application for that funding.
And this one was number 4.
And then 4.
Coastal protection schemes. Officer McCann.
I think one of the things I'd point out in general is this report was probably prepared 6 to 8 weeks ago, and it's
Yeah.
been through various political groups. Yeah, to get here. So obviously it's not a current up-to-date view. I think with the coastal protection, there was some snagging issues towards the monthly scheme, which I believe was led by Town Council. And I think most of those have been progressed. In terms of the Coastwise programme, this is a very large programme funded by the Environment Agency, and it had a very tight deliverable. There's no ability to carry forward money beyond the end of the programme of the 31st of March 2027. And a lot of the Coastwise activities are very long term. So it was always challenging to meet that deadline. However, whilst that particular CTAP programme may not spend all the money during that time period, we are still trying and coming up with new ideas. We've had very strong engagement with the Environment Agency, taking out directors to see some of the work we've been doing at various points of vulnerability along the coast. And we're having very positive discussions around what kind of programme could succeed the Coastwise CTAP funding. And that's all moving in a positive direction.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Leaf?
I think what you were saying, Mr. Hammond, was very useful for us to know. Would it be possible to add a column where, a sort of discretionary column, where you could say this is a situation, unless it's subject to confidentiality, so that we would understand that the North Walsham pitch might not happen, that, you know, where you are in the discussions.
So I think there were, and I was literally just about to put my microphone on along that very line, is I think the two that you've identified are ones where actually additional information to explain the reason that they're amber would be really helpful for the committee, because actually in some of these, you know, they're often quite simple issues to articulate in terms of where the issues are. And so I think we'll take away in the first instance, notwithstanding the discussions that have just happened, and look at how we can try and make sure that the narrative that's provided to this committee is as full as possible to explain, particularly around the ambers, I think, or the ambers and reds, is to explain the position around why it's an amber and what's being done to bring it back on track, if that is something that we can achieve, is within our control, because sometimes the elements of amber are bits that are outside of our control. So I'll certainly take that away, and we can have that discussion about how we better inform the committee, particularly about ambers and reds.
Okay, Councillor Shaz.
So just touching back on that, we'll use the football club as an example. This is what I was speaking about when I was addressing Councillor Cushing. In my portfolio report to full council next week, there is a line in there about the lease renewal in consultation with the funding body continues to be delayed, awaiting response from the tenant. So there is the update in there, and that's what I was talking about. We, as cabinet members, do the update to all the council meetings, and putting all that information into here, along with any of the reports that come about, are going to be, it's going to be, it's good, unwieldy, yes, it will boost your pack no end. So we need to figure out, how do we pull all that information together if the committee's finding that difficult to track, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it's still appropriate for this committee, if they want to dive deeper into the issues behind that, to ask those further questions. Ultimately, my preference would be, and this is meant as no disrespect for this committee, for you not to have to ask questions about, you know, those elements, because it should be presented to you in a way that you can then look at more detail. And what I would say in terms of the discussions that today, and I'd like to thank committee because they have been very helpful for me, and I'm sure that the Director of Resources and I will be having a conversation post this about how we can look to improve the information that we've provided to address the issues that you've raised. So I'm hopeful that the next report that you get will be delivered in a way that some of the things about the questions you've had about progress, about next steps, about why things aren't where they should be if they are in that position, effectively are addressed for you.
Thank you. So that any internal meeting we had would be about other nice to haves, such as metrics and benchmarking and trends and those sorts of things. Okay. So if we take that away. Yeah, okay. But in general, you will reflect on the, need to explain ambers and deviations and things like that without us having to make a formal recommendation. Okay, anybody else got any questions about the actual progress, the actual actions? Councillor Fletcher.
Well, it's stuff that I'm thinking six on there, which is about the rural statement to intend to sign out local services. This is very important because we are what's there. So I'm not going to I just wonder whether there has to be a deadline on this and making sure it's start. So has to be so it does that doesn't way something done and maybe it's not that they are really
I think you've raised a pertinent issue there when it's clear that our current government don't really understand rurality. And I think what you're suggesting is that we have a greater importance on ensuring that this is resolved, because our communities are not really seen for who they are and the wonder that they are by central government. And we see that in many ways across the country, where the metropolitan boroughs are more favoured than we are in a rural position. So can I take that away and see where we are and what we need to do? Because I know that staff capacity in that area is quite tight, but I think you're correct. Potentially there's a different way to do it. So are you happy for me to take that away? Yeah.
Very good suggestion. Thank you. Councillor Cushing?
Yes, also on page 20, on the neighbourhood plans. Recently, Kingswing and West Norfolk Borough Council overwrote a local plan, I believe, a neighbourhood plan. They rejected it. What comments would you have about the sacrosanctity of the local neighbourhood plans that are being developed in North Norfolk? Is there indeed any threat that actually this council could actually override them, or indeed going forward the government might do?
Do you know, you are testing me today, Councillor Cushing. I appreciate it. I think we need to really make sure that communities understand what a neighbourhood plan is designed to do. And that is the cherry on the top and the local, hyper-local voice that goes hand in hand with our local plan. Anybody that is looking to embark on a neighbourhood plan, I would really suggest that you meet with officers first. Officers of this council are very open to making sure that communities are on the right foot when it comes to neighbourhood planning, and making sure that they're not wasting effort where the council's already done some work. So that would be the first thing that I would suggest. I'm not aware of a case here, although I may be corrected, where our officers or indeed our planning committee, development committee have overwritten a neighbourhood plan. I'm not aware of that at all. But I'm not aware also of where we have a community where they have a neighbourhood plan and a large development, where the large development have overridden the neighbourhood plan either. I think the difficulty that we have overall is when we look at all the changes that are coming is complacency and where communities feel like they don't have a voice anymore. And I think that's what the neighbourhood plan has given them, a document to have a real say and a voice. And that's going to be part of the work we've got to do as local members, moving towards whatever council comes next. We have to make sure that the community have that voice. We've seen similar issues in Sheringham where the community voice has been challenged and removed in places and not heard. And that's created complete upset in a community that didn't need to happen. So it's about how do we as local members ensure that the voice is heard, and if it is being challenged at development committee or by planners, or even if the government put their big boots on and come and stomp all over us, it's up to us to unite to say, actually, no, this is what the community have agreed, this is what we've agreed when we've accepted it, this is where we should be, and it's up to us to make sure that it's steered correctly. We don't know what's coming with Unitree, and we don't know what the government's going to do next. So it's up to us to all take a stand collectively to make sure that the community voice is represented through every area, and specifically with this item through the way they want a neighbourhood to be developed.
Officer Hem, did you want to come in?
Yeah, Councillor Cushing, sorry, can I just understand your initial part of your question? Are you suggesting that the Borough Council has basically made a decision that is contrary to a neighbourhood plan in terms of their planning?
That was my understanding from reading a press article,
Okay.
but I stand to be.
So accepting fully what Councillor Shires has said, what I would say is that planning decisions are made on a balance of a raft of things. So it might be that a planning committee, a local planning authority planning committee, may take a number of policies and activities that form that application and make a decision that is contrary to one of those policies, because they have to balance and weigh all of the factors that are there in making that decision. And so I can't guarantee, in terms of the sacrosanctity, that's not an officer led, that's not a position that they would take, but a committee of councillors forming that development committee will balance and weigh everything and say, well, this element is more important than this. So they might reach a point where, in terms of a particular application, they say, yes, we understand that there are a policy around this, there's a policy around this, there's a policy, highways, etc. They may form a view that, despite whatever it might be, being slightly outside of that plan or policy, that actually, on the balance of things, that application should progress. So I think, in terms of your question, it's not a council position, it's a member position in terms of the local planning authority planning development committee in this case.
I think we're in agreement. We all support the drafting of neighbourhood plans. Clearly, I think the point that you've articulated, Councillor Shires, that the drafting of that, the people doing the drafting need to work closely with this authority to make sure that actually what they're proposing will not cause any likely difficulties in future. Subject, as you say, there may be the odd thing that crops up, but I think we are pushing that proposal. So I think we'll do everything to encourage that.
That's for Gray.
Would encourage everyone to take part in the free neighbourhood planning seminars that go on. It's quite interesting to understand how neighbourhood plans are formed. I've spent some time going through this over a long period of time, and that they are considerations taken on board by planning committees, but they do not supersede local plans or any other planning statutes at all. They're merely to be considered, although I would caution you that once you start with a neighbourhood plan, it's a continual process that you must review over and over, but there are lots of really interesting resources out there that are worth looking at.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hankins.
Thank you, Chair. I think that there is a situation here where a simple explanation of the benefits of a local neighbourhood plan would be useful. I've discussed this with Adam, and for my constituency, the views vary from a very cynical view. What's the benefit? Why should we to a view of it's an extremely beneficial, and we back this, you know, so meeting those two sort of aspirations with a simple document which says the benefits are these would be helpful. It'd certainly be helpful for me, and it might be helpful for other members.
I think
Thank you.
Officer Falconbridge has that in training.
Yep.
But thank you for raising it. Okay, well, we've been, has everyone got any more comments? I think we've made some helpful suggestions and we can still discuss further on our own. So I think we've made sufficient comments. We're invited to note it. And are you happy with that, Adam? Lovely. Okay, so if we move on to the council tax discounts, you're happy to do this before a coffee break, are you? You've still got the energy? Okay. So item 13. Thank you very much, Officer Hems. Council tax discounts and premiums determinations.
Yes. So this has already been through cabinet for those of you who sat through the cabinet meeting. The points that I wanted to make on this were in the pack. You have a yellow highlighted paragraph. And thank you to Officer McCallum who updated me prior to this. The paragraph isn't quite correct because it's not legislative that we have to publicise in the newspaper. It's best practice and we opt to use best practice, which I think we just need to make sure that the committee is aware of that, but it is being altered when it comes to full council. The part that I wanted to discuss in this is in relation to the second homes, as I alluded to in the previous item. We've talked about what we're going to do with second homes in this paper. We have to make that position prior to February. That doesn't mean that we are in the position where we're saying, yes, we're doing it. Negotiations are still going on with the county council. We feel that we're in the same position that we were this time last year, heading to the same decision. As you're aware, with the money that we did for second homes, we've put a reserve specifically to meet the cost of the temporary accommodation, specifically the overnight accommodation. That's in the reserves. You'll have seen that at the last budget monitoring. And also we've used some of it in the back here to purchase some temporary accommodation, which we will be looking at in the next paper. How fantastic that all our papers interlinked today. So just so that you're aware, the decision on the second home doesn't mean that the committee is deciding that we're going to do that today. That's just a position that we will take should negotiations be successful. And both of the things interlink really. So where I've just talked about the best practice in the publication in the newspaper, and where I've just talked about second homes, if you remember, and I just want to raise it again, that the revenues team here successfully defended a second homes premium challenge at the valuation tribunal, which confirmed that the exception classes G and H will apply only for 12 months from when the property was first marketed, even if the date is before the legislation enabling the premium. And it was the first case of its kind to be heard in England. And we won the case, which is great news because it shows that our revenues team are implementing effectively and correctly the legislation that we've been given and the rule set that revolves around that. So that now sits into Appendix C, so there's clarification in there. So it's clear that when we've got any customers who feel like we're not behaving in a way which they would expect, they can go and have a look at the information to make sure that they're correct on the situation they're going to appeal on. And it also shows that our team is really leading the way here. And this positive decision will help other councils who are facing similar appeals, and it'll provide more certainty for our second home revenue going forward and also for other councils. And part of the evidence base is that we've used, for example, is where we've published the information in the newspaper. So these actions, whilst it's not legislative, it's best practice. And this is a really core reason why it is best practice. So that's the additional information that I wanted to offer. But obviously, if Officer McCallum has got anything to offer, then I'm happy to defer.
I had a question at the bottom of page 39, 3.1. Is that Is 24-25 the correct year?
Yes, I wouldn't think so. I would think that Officer Knight, who has been able to create a report in a format of which the committee enjoys, has not deviated from it and has just left a date in there.
Okay. And Appendix A, is this the full list of properties? Seems very, it seems very extensive.
I'll need to revert to my
Appendix A,
colleague.
sorry.
Yes, it is a short list.
Short list.
And I'll need to revert whether there's been it's been truncated in the
These are
editing.
the very limited duration second homes, is that correct?
I think there are a number of properties that don't pay the full council tax either for sometimes it's because they have restrictions on the
Yeah.
use. So for example, they might only be allowed to be occupied for 11 months of the year.
Yeah.
Beach chalets, those sorts of things. I'll need to revert whether that is the complete list. I do remember seeing a longer list,
Seeing a long
but-
list in the past.
and I wonder if that's an edit issue, but thank you
Okay.
for raising that, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Cushing?
Thank you. Page 44, we got risks down and we say no new risks, but given what Councillor Shah has said about second home council tax premium, is there not a risk about the legal challenge and also people switching their residences?
I think you are correct, but given what we're dealing with in terms of council tax and discounts applied, and from there's risk across the whole piece with challenge. So whether or not that's something that GRAC wish to pick up in terms of monitoring that, I'm not entirely sure. Legal challenge is a risk that the council holds as an overarching. So is that something you would wish that was noted here, or would you wish to make sure that GRAC are effectively looking at legal challenge?
I think it's a fair point about GRAC and the corporate risk register. It might be something that's worth noting and forwarding perhaps for our next meeting. We have a look at that. We also perhaps useful to try and quantify what the risk actually is. I don't know how easy or difficult that might be. And that might be as a consequence of the outcome of the legal challenges, I guess.
Yeah, I would say that when we there's a lot of unknowns, and as always with government change, there's lots of unknowns, and they don't give you a definitive you can do this but not this guideline. We know this. So there's always an element of risk that somebody may make a mistake or interpret something differently. What we've seen through the tribunal is that we have interpreted everything correctly. So that has reduced any future risk. So I would, that's GRAC, I think, to add that to the register. I don't know if it would just specifically be around second homes, because I think there's lots of council tax and business rates that leaves us in a challenging position when government change things.
Anybody else got any points on this paper? No? Well, the recommendations on page 37, 1 through 8, I won't read them. We'd be glad to know. Are you all happy to vote on them? Yes? Are those in favour? I mean, as usual, it's very nice, clear, succinct report. Though I did miss the extra pages of addresses. I was a bit sad about that, but anyway. Okay, so the next item is item 14. Do people want to go on straight to that, or do you want to have a coffee break? Coffee, are you okay with that, Nikki? Sorry. We're going to have a coffee break. So we'll come back at 11:15. Is that long enough, everybody? Yeah, thanks. Mont Blancs when I started my practice. And of course, first of all, I lost it within about 2 seconds. And they're a bit gross, I think, actually. Yeah. Okay, welcome back, everybody. So now we are to consider agenda item 14, which is the analysis of our temporary accommodation and its performance. And thank you very much indeed for turning the report around so quickly in order to accommodate our schedule. It's much appreciated. Thank you. So would you like to introduce it? You're both going to, oh, you're fighting over it.
I'll begin. So if not all members will remember the journey that we've been on with temporary accommodation, we've used this to meet a number of needs. The primary thing that we did when we looked at the way we were using temporary accommodation was that many times families were removed from communities and in accommodation that wasn't suitable for their family size. So the disruption of homelessness was far reaching, especially to families where we have children who were being housed in overnight accommodation, but also the removal from communities is quite powerful when it comes to recovery from homelessness. So that was one of the primary driving factors for us to look at temporary accommodation, was to mitigate some of the overarching issues that arise and impacts that will have on people's recovery when they find themselves in a really difficult situation. So that is not as easy to quantify as the financials. So we know that as a council over the last number of years, we've seen a rise in the cost of temporary accommodation, specifically the overnight accommodation, and that has been the main driver of some of the decisions that we have made for the budget. I've touched on second homes council tax, which has run through all three of the papers today, and the way that we've used the second home council tax to not only improve outcomes for our families and residents who are facing homelessness, but to create financial sustainability for this council. So there is some performance data in there about finances, which I think will help the committee see the journey that we've been on and the impact that that's having, not only on this council and residents, but on the financial security of our budget going forward. So I will take the opportunity to thank the team. And when I say the team, Nikki hasn't got a huge team working on this, but also the teams that are working with our families that are in a homelessness position. And we will continue to work through that as we have seen. So in the report, you'll see the types of accommodation that we've had, where the funding's come from, and the way that we've spent it, and the work that we've done as a team to make sure that we are not only meeting the need of homelessness, but also bearing in mind the impacts that it does have on the expenditure of the council, and how the work that we have done so far has ticked all the boxes as far as we're concerned to show that we're progressing and investing money in the right places. So I'll hand over to Officer Derridge, who will add some more meat to that.
Thank you, Councillor Shires. Yes, I mean, I think the report is fairly self-explanatory. I suppose the thing that perhaps isn't highlighted in the report, but just to put in context, we've gone from a situation of having our first in-house TA unit in 2017 to having 32 by the end of this year. And that has, taken a lot of effort from the teams to go to managing one unit of temporary accommodation to managing 32, doing that effectively. And I think you'll see from contents of the report, there has been work that's needed to be done to make sure we are improving the value for money of how we do things. And we have learnt along the way, from the types of properties we've purchased and the way we've managed them. But what's been really very impressive as far as I'm concerned is the way the teams have worked together, particularly property service and housing options, to make sure the homes are turned around. They're turned around to bring good accommodation to families and to make that difference that Councillor Shires has highlighted. I mean, in terms of the simple metrics in here, it's wall-to-wall good news, I believe, that the homes are different to the way that are nightly paid. We lose money on every time we're putting somebody into nightly paid, as well as the consequences for that household. When we put them into our own TA, The subsidy completely covers the rental income. And as you can see, we've started to make an annual surplus of rent above the costs of the TA. So it is making us a profit that we can reinvest in the services of homelessness. It's making a massive saving compared to the costs, net costs of nightly paid. So over the last 4 years, over 1.2 million has been saved. We've got a valuable capital asset. The value of the properties that we've bought is more than the amount we paid for them. And the other good news is that half of the money that we used to pay for them, or in excess of half the money we used to pay for them, has come from separate grant money, not from mainstream funding. So I think it's been proven to be a really good approach, which is why we are hoping to continue it, because unfortunately what hasn't changed is the housing need in the district and the level of homeless inquiries that we are still receiving. And I don't think we're going to see that change for certainly the short to medium term. We have a very healthy pipeline of affordable homes, but they're not here now. New homes are to come in the future, and I'm hopeful that there will come a time when homelessness is not eradicated. I don't think it ever will be, but certainly we are able to allocate homes far more quickly and reduce to an absolute minimum the time families are in temporary accommodation.
Councillor Hankins, Councillor Bailey.
Thank you to the officer for an excellent outturn. Can I ask, some of us, probably all of us, have had quite a go at the parish councils and saying, you can help in this and this is how you help. What kind of response have you had from that in terms of referrals, etc.?
In terms of homelessness referrals and reaching out, I will have to ask my colleagues in housing options, but I certainly know that the community connectors working with the local parishes are starting to do some of that excellent early intervention work to identify cases early on, nip in the bud where it's possible to do that. It's not always possible to do that, but nip in the bud and work with the household within the community to try and resolve issues before they become a homelessness case. And that's what we'd really like to do, that intervention upstream. I know there are examples of it. I don't think we have numbers yet because it's really difficult to put a number to prevention. How do you know what you've prevented, what would have happened if you hadn't stepped in? So I think quantifying some of the work of the community connectors is a real challenge, but it's something that I know the housing options team and the director are looking at trying to quantify.
In respect of the purchase of new properties, have you had any sort of referral feedback?
We don't really reach out to communities for the purchase of new properties. Got to be honest, we have specific criteria about the properties we want to purchase. Given the nature of the households and that you are, as much as we wish to keep people as local as we can, we are always going to be uprooting somebody probably from the village or wherever they're coming from. But we need the TA to be in the towns because we need it to be close to the facilities, particularly close to public transport that enables people to maintain those links with the communities that they've come from. So I'll be honest with you, the referrals come from something called Rightmove. That's how we find our properties because we're looking for homes in the right location, homes of the right type, particularly those that are energy efficient so that we are, minimising our carbon footprint and also minimising the bills for residents, importantly on low incomes, to make sure that they can heat the homes effectively.
Thank you.
Councillor Bailey. Or do you want to go first?
I just wanted to add on to that. So part of the work and the information that came out from the team is also to help inform when we have social housing developments come through, so that parish councils have got a greater understanding of why the need is so great in their local area. And I think that's the work that we do as local members, is to make sure that the messages are getting from this building out into the community. But just touching on the preventative work that is being done and still needs to be done, there are some parts of our communities that are still distrustful of local authorities getting involved in their situation. So if anybody does come forward and say, I'm at risk, my landlord has said this, or whatever else is going on, then we need to make sure that everybody knows the earlier that you contact the teams at the council, the better the help is going to be, because the more time they've got to work with communities. So perhaps there's a little bit that needs to be done where members have got the information on where they need to go to make that connection, because otherwise people tend to, you know, just back into a corner and know it's going to happen and feel powerless, but we need to let them know that we're here to support them.
Thank you. I mean, we have got a very good background now in homelessness, having had that excellent review. So it's really useful to have this today, isn't it? Councillor Bailey?
Yes, thank you for this. My sort of question really was, when we had I only received a couple of complaints from residents regarding the sort of second home premium at the time, and a lot of it, both the complaints I had was that, you know, if they were then forced to sell their property, it wouldn't help the homeless situation because the size of the property was you know, so it was a flawed plan. And when I explained that the premium would allow us to purchase suitable accommodation, they kind of got it, and it did help the tone of the email. And also I think it helped them because they were seeing that actually they were contributing to easing a problem, and the money was kind of earmarked, because I think no one likes to pay extra taxes, but when you explain what you're paying for and that money is being raised and used in this way, they kind of got it. So I just wondered if my question really was around publicising this maybe more, or because it might help communities who maybe dislike the fact that a large percentage of their population, or a percentage, or maybe 40–50% are second homes. But if they are then contributing in this way, maybe there'll be less, should I say, angst between the two parties.
I think that's a really good point, and it's something we're trying to do. So we sent out a briefing note to all members, explaining, well, setting out the position with second homes and holiday lets, the analysis we did at the beginning of October, the numbers and the finances and everything. We're going to try and link that with this report, and also when we get the decision from county on next year, to try and tie that all together to say, look, this is the story. This is what's happened over the last year. This is what the impact of the second homes council tax premium has been. This is what we've done with the money and how it's helped. And this is what we intend doing going forward. And that's why we're continuing to do this, hopefully.
So I've had a number, as you have, Councillor Bailey, of people who've been unhappy when they've received their bill to see that extra layer of tax, so to speak. But you're right, when we explain what it's going towards, I've not really had anybody who said, you know what, I don't want to do that. Most people who buy a second home buy it because they deeply love the area, or they inherit it because a family member deeply loved the area. And this is a really positive way of securing accommodation for people who they are part of a community. The second home owners are part of a community, but not here as often as they would like. And I think overall we've done some really positive work, and you're right, it's getting the message out. So potentially, depending on what the decision is with the second homes premium, maybe that should form part of the report, so that we can make sure that it's publicised, the really, really positive impacts that our second homeowners are having on residents who are vulnerable.
Yeah, I think members briefing is one thing, but just, yeah, something to go out to the parishes, also, you know, just it's a very good news story all round.
Councillor Cushing?
Thank you. Thank you for the report. Got a question, please, in terms of what your criteria are for selecting properties to buy. I just looked down the list that you have, and I know there's more of there aren't that many on the western side of the region, and I think there's only one sort of east of North Walsham as well. Is that based on the fact that actually there's more demand in that area, or is it based on the suitability of properties available on the market at any one time?
In all honesty, it's a balance of the two. In previous funding rounds, when we've been using grant, there have been some specific requirements about size. We've also had limited budgets in some years, and it is the art of the possible. And that will steer us towards particular parts of the district. However, more recently, we have been able to look at that geographic spread and say, actually, we need properties that are more evenly spread. There have been some restrictions on that. So the east side of the district is the least served by gas, and doesn't have particularly new properties. So when we're trying to find energy efficient properties, we struggle there because we don't want oil-fired properties, because there are major issues for residents as well as obviously the carbon impact of that, of how you buy oil and how you're paying for that. We have started to target more properties over in the western side, and 2 out of the 3 that we're in the process of buying are in Fakenham. So we are evening things up, and we'll continue to do that to look at where the demand is. In all honesty, the demand tends to be more concentrated in the centre of the district, the kind of line between North Horsham, Crowmer, Sheringham.
I had 3 questions, if that's all right. Number one was, what were the improvements to the management that were suggested? That's 110 on page 58. And do you want to deal with them one by one? So page 58, paragraph 110. I think you mentioned that some improvement to the management. I think you referred to it in your introduction. Some improvements to the management of our temporary accommodation were identified in EELGA's report. I think you refer to that.
Okay, so I think the answer is probably in section 5 of the report, where you've got a list of some of the improvements. Most of those came directly from the ILGA report or from us identifying some issues. I would say probably the most effective thing has been the establishment of the TA steering group.
Right.
The management of the units is spread across 4 or 5 different service areas, and bringing those together, understanding shared agendas around this has helped enormously, particularly around understanding the right types of work to be done to properties when they become empty. What's the most effective things to be done? Which are the important things to be done whilst we're still taking account of value for money? We want homes to be good, safe, decent places, but we have to kind of try and not spend too much money on them.
Yeah. Okay.
It's that balance.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. That's helpful. What are the indirect costs, such as the interest, the missed interest and the corporate allocations, for example?
So every activity that the council does, an element of the overheads of the council are attributed to that when you're trying to compare with other local authorities or other organisations delivering a particular service. So, a percentage of my costs, a percentage of everybody's costs, a percentage of running the democracy, everything have to be attributed to some end activity. However, and previously we have included those costs, but we looked at it, and as I said, I think in the report it identifies 2 reasons why we haven't included those in the value for money analysis. One is they were all there anyway before we started buying our own TA. So the staff involved in managing in-house TA would have been managing the contracts with nightly paid, dealing with households and trying to support households when they were in nightly paid. So transferring activity across to our own accommodation hasn't actually created any different costs. It's just where you would attribute them to if you were reporting externally has changed. And the other reason is when we tell you what the cost of nightly paid is, we don't attribute any staff overheads to that. So you would be comparing apples and pears, not apples and apples. So we didn't think it was fair and reasonable to put those overhead elements onto the costs of our own in-house TA. So we were comparing it on a level playing field with nightly paid.
Okay, and the interest that would have been gained on the 2.4 million that would have been spent. I mean, it's a bit academic. I was just.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't included that. We haven't included the opportunity costs of purchasing our own properties. It's a moot point as to whether we would have gained any interest on that, or whether we would have in fact just had a higher nightly paid bill and used some of that money for paying nightly paid. But it's a fair point if you were looking at a proper full-rounded business case for buying. And when we purchased the first properties and Cabinet received reports recommending we purchase, we did include the interest rate as part of the calculations.
Okay, sorry.
Just to add on that, in terms of financing costs, where we are using internal or external borrowing, we obviously have an MRP charge. And in a business case, I would always include a representative cost of capital, as an appropriate PWLB loan, even though we may not externalise that debt. In terms of the lost investment opportunity, in terms of where we've got grant money, well, we wouldn't have had that grant money, number one. Number two, if we weren't reinvesting in our TA offer and our stock, there's a possibility that we wouldn't have received quite so much of a share from the county council. This current year, we claw back 25% of county share, and we've asked for the same. Again, for next year, a consistent offer. Obviously, there's a lot more money out there that we're not seeing, that's contributing to the police service and other county services, besides homelessness.
Well, that's very helpful, thank you. And one final question. I think you've got to retain some of the units for 30 years, is that correct? So what happens when we disappear in 28?
Well, the successor authority will take
They will take
responsibility.
over,
The reality is the need for those units is not going to disappear regardless of the admin organisation in. So, yes.
Okay.
And I think it's really important that when we work through whatever we're doing in LGR, and I've spoken at length about making sure that our assets are protected for local communities, it is my wish that we ensure that the TA is protected for people in the locality. Because I think it's really important, and my fear, and I think it's fears of the teams, is that when we're part of a larger authority, how far could residents be displaced? So we need to make sure that when we take the journey of assets and what we're doing with assets and what our meaning is for them, that we are really, really clear that we wish for these to be used for people to be housed in their locality, even if it's on a temporary basis.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else got any comments on this excellent report? Okay, so we've been asked to review it. I think, have we feel happy with reviewed it sufficiently? I think so. We don't have to do any more than that. No. Oh, thank you very much. It was really helpful. Especially the timing of it was just perfect. So thank you very much for that. So now we have the Health Overview Select Committee minutes for just noting, and we're very fortunate Councillor Showers is going to give us an update.
So with my other hat, I'm a county member who sits on HOSC. So the only thing that I wanted to add above, you've got a really comprehensive report, is where we talked about speech and language therapy. We weren't able to get any information in the meeting. And that was really frustrating because we couldn't see how big the pool or how underserved it was. So I'll read you the question that I wrote to Cabinet and the information that I got back, if that's okay, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you.
So the question that I asked, and I'll read it verbatim, is at the recent Health Overview and Scrutiny, at the recent Health Overview Select Committee meeting, it was reported that around 4% of Norfolk's children are referred to the jointly commissioned speech and language therapy service each year. To understand whether the service has sufficient capacity to meet this level of demand, could the Cabinet member provide the current number of children receiving this therapy, including typical waiting times, the current number of staff in the workforce in whole-time equivalents, and the Cabinet's assessment of whether additional staffing or resource are required to make the service fit for purpose? Those were questions that we hadn't got an answer to in the committee. So the Cabinet member for Children's Services, which is Councillor Carpenter, had responded. The following information is taken from our latest provider returns with Cambridgeshire Community Service for August 25 to October 25. During this time, there were 5,165 children accessing the speech and language therapy service with Cambridgeshire Community Service across 12 service pathways, with a varying level of intervention required, tailoring to the needs of the children. For health pathways, there's an NHS target waiting time of 18 weeks, and 81% of children were seen within this timescale. It's important to note that the waiting list is prioritised based on need, and the most urgent cases are seen more quickly. For education, health and care plan assessments, requests 98% were completed within the 2-week target, where the child is already known to the service, and 65% when they weren't. All children are receiving the speech and language therapy provision outlined within their EHCP. The current staffing establishment is 63.77 full-time equivalents. Norfolk County Council, Norfolk and Waveney Integrated Care Board and Cambridge Community Service have worked closely together to review the staffing levels and working models to ensure that this is sufficient to meet the current and future speech and language needs for children. Over the last financial year, Norfolk County Council and Norfolk and Waveney Integrated Care Board have supported Cambridge Community Service with additional recurrent funding to ensure that we can maintain the quality care and support they provide to children and families. Additional funding and staff would enable us to improve the speech and language outcomes of children and families further with early intervention and support to schools and settings, but the current provision should enable continued performance at the current levels. It links a little bit to the indices of deprivation that we've seen, where we've got an under 5s developmental and we're not hitting the targets for our under 5s. And I can confirm that in the notes that you got from the report, that the letter has gone to government to ask for a overarching policy that serves children rather than different strands that come through to make it easier for staff.
I had a couple of questions. Does anybody else have questions? Would you like to ask questions? I was just wondering about the pathology. How can we be assured that no significant harm has happened? Are these methodologies, sufficient? I was wondering if there was something a bit more precise in terms of contacting the patients, or whether it seemed a little bit indirect to me.
So that question was asked and we were assured that there was no significant harm. We challenged back and said the well-being of patients waiting, specifically if they're awaiting the outcome of a potential cancer diagnosis. And their suggestion was that they've not had any feedback to suggest that that's having a detrimental impact, but their teams are in position to support people should it be needed. I think the difficulty, there's lots of different avenues of which to challenge that. I think waiting times are impactful. We did have that conversation. There was a number of issues regarding the waiting times, and one of which is where we have cases where there are multiple slides sent for one patient. That does cause a delay, but some of the cases are quite tricky and difficult and need a little bit more attention. And what they have suggested is that they're focusing on where cases have a greater sense of urgency, which I think is fair, but they ascertain that they're still meeting targets and requirements in that way. But we haven't had the information that I requested, which was the breakdown of turnaround times. We're still waiting for that.
Were you content with that staffing pattern for speech and language in terms, is there a national benchmark for therapists per children requiring it?
So my concern overall is where we have families who are then given a sheet or a link to a website to say this is where you'll find your speech and language information. Now it's up to you. We have a number of families who themselves maybe have had a learning difficulty as a young person, or who have a speech and language need themselves, who are then put in charge of developing their child's speech and language, which I think is unfair. And it's a lot of pressure because families are then taking the role of a professional, or they view as a professional to undertake this. But I don't know whether or not you've all had the chance to look at the deprivation data or the health inequalities data, and I would urge the committee to do so, because the under 5s development is a huge concern, because that goes to affect a lifetime. So personally, I think there's too much pressure on parents to deliver speech and language therapy where they don't have a specific framework or measure. But we haven't had any more information on outcomes.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else got any questions? Okay, well, we've noted that. Thank you very much indeed for the update. That was very timely. So we move on to agenda item 16. You can leave if you like. Thank you very much for coming. Okay, so agenda item 16 is the Cabinet Work Programme. Does anyone have any comments about that? No? Okay. And the next item 17 is the recommendations and actions tracker. Adam, do you have anything to add on this or?
Yes, I do actually. We have had that the sort of the answer to that last sort of outstanding question that obviously we were missing yesterday at the pre-meet. So I can sort of get that to you sort of in writing now to sort of at the close of this meeting if that's acceptable.
No, you've been very efficient in getting the answers to us. It's been very helpful.
I thank you to Councillor Shires for assistance on that as well. Thank you.
Okay. Everyone's been very efficient. Okay, so now we come on to the scrutiny work programme. Adam, do you want to walk us through this?
Yep. So
Before we participate?
absolutely. So obviously, I think we're if Chair obviously agrees, we probably go into sort of a private session for the sort of the mobile connectivity session. But there are obviously quite a few items on the work programme, many to do with sort of health. So when we had sort of a pre-agenda meeting with the chair and the vice chair, Councillor Gray came up with a sort of a good suggestion. There's potential there for some data that we could access and get a presentation on regarding sort of deprivation figures for the area.
I think, that's what the Councillor Shires was referring to?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Councillor Shires mentioned as well, and we thought that would be good, maybe not just for this committee, but maybe for all members potentially. It would be a private session. I'm sort of in the process of trying to get that arranged, but I thought that would sort of feed in well to many of the sort of the items on the work programme. I think with access to dentists, sort of access to GPs, closure of sort of health community facilities, even with the idea, I think of probably with the item of substance abuse has been on the work programme for quite a while, which we were quite keen to sort of bring. And again, that with the idea of maybe sort of, again, the deprivation, mental health, public transport, I think was on there. And that would also link in, maybe if you are sort of not able to sort of access those community projects and facilities, then obviously maybe that data that we could maybe get from a presentation on the deprivation could lead into lots of those different items. And if you felt that was worthwhile, we could maybe link in and do a big scoping session down the line of maybe looking at that as a broader picture, perhaps before we focus in. Is that, if that's sounds like a good idea?
Because February is pretty much rammed, I think, with budgetary stuff, and then it's all a little bit looser, I would say. And so Mal and the vice chair was thinking that we could go off piste and do some sort of more overview rather than scrutiny to topics, because that's probably where we'll add value at the moment, given that the world is in flux. So we'll talk about that later. But as far as, if you have any other comments about the concrete items, are we definitely getting the homelessness and our sleeping strategy?
So yeah, the homelessness strategy, I think we probably could have asked Dickie really for an update on that, but I think we're looking with the February, with obviously we're very heavy with the financial side of things. So
yeah,
I think housing would like to bring it in February, but we might sort of be better off, I think, bringing it in March. I think even they might not even see it in cabinet until March either. So we generally sort of see it just after cabinet. So I'll keep you updated on that, but I think more likely to be March for the housing.
Oh.
We did have an update. Councillor Hankins did ask me to sort of obviously up for an update on the NNDC workforce, which I did send an email late last night about that. But again, that has been delayed with LGR. Obviously, the decision there, obviously, we can't really do a piece on that until that decision is known. And then obviously, we've got to give it probably a little bit of time, obviously, before any kind of, we have to review it before we know how that affects the staff morale and obviously the impact on sort of delivering those services. But if that was happy, we're probably looking at probably more like July for that.
Okay. Does anyone got any questions? No? Okay. In which case, that's the close of the public meeting, isn't it? Yep, and then we'll go into our private session.